That's what I'm sharing with you. Community resilience, case of urban rehabilitation and resettlement in Mumbai. This is specific to the Mumbai Urban Transport Project 2, which was funded by the World Bank. And I was part of the team. I was chief there, and I was responsible for looking after the rehabilitation and resettlement. And from a background on infrastructure financing, development planning, and then environment and heritage, getting into this domain was something very interesting and quite different. So the first thing I would like to share with you, within the World Bank and in the World Bank financing structure, there is something called the inspection panel. Very few countries, very few projects in the world actually go through the hammer of inspection panel. Inspection panel, prima facie, is a kind of an audit on the lending operations of the World Bank. So it is nothing to do with the project per se, but operations of World Bank. So these are the donor countries who actually have certain queries, have certain concerns about the lending operations happening on a particular project. So it was a kind of a, I would say, excellent privilege for me that I was also part of the review by an international agency on the funding of an international agency itself. They are absolutely separate, they disparate, and they don't bother. They come like an absolutely hardcore auditor. So it was a great experience, and we were with them for about 12 days, and that's the background on which this project is done. So it has gone through its hiccups, it has gone through its due diligence, it has gone through its I would say complaints and queries and whatever you want to call it. And and within about, I think, 12 days and overall 25 days, I think the project got a clearance, and we were again able to start the project. So there was a embargo and stop go. So that's how the project is. So that itself indicates the dynamics, that itself indicates the concerns, when it is related to rehabilitation and resettlement. And this is what I would like to share with you. I think this, I always share this screen with each and every concern which I talk on urbanization, that it is an inevitable process. And it's a very clear distinction which you see, rural to urban. And what was 30% urban in 1950 is likely to be 70% in 2050. So in 100 years, you have a 40% rise on the urban scale. On the converse, if you see, what was 70% rural in 1950 is going to be 30% rural in 2050. So that is the change in the scale, which is likely to be bothering all of us in the urban domain. This
You can use the down arrow.
No, screen is frozen.
We can hide it also.
Sorry.
Yes. Now working fine. Yeah.
So, in the context of rehabilitation and resettlement, that is R&R, it is induced by urban development projects, and it is becoming increasingly kind of a serious concern, especially in the rapidly growing cities with high proportions of informal sectors and slums. We can discuss this at a later date, what we mean by informal sector and slum. It's a domain by itself. I have been involved in it for the last 25 years. So we can discuss that, and it is city specific, and we will not go deeper into that. But the point is, On one hand, you have an urbanization process which is inevitable. On the other hand, you have the demand for infrastructure, and it also takes you into the domain that you have to take care of the rehabilitation and resettlement. I always say these are the shades of gray, and it will keep changing, and the proportion, the scale, the depth, the spectrum, all of them will change. Like what we started way back in 2003, 2004, probably today in 2021, it's quite different because the policies have changed, the city economy has changed, the political economy has changed. So we will have to adjust ourselves. We will have to look at, how well we take care of it, and how, I would say, the inclusivity in the planning process, how well we can integrate. So that's the background on which this is there. So we are talking about, or looking forward, that 70% of the population is going to be urban in 2050. So next 30 years, be prepared that we need to look at this scale on a different platform. And specific to Mumbai, it's a city larger than life. And this, I found the PPT and I liked it so much. I said, yes, it is true. No, it's a city larger than life. And can you believe that this PPT was created by Tanisha Agarwal from Chandigarh. And I found it so interesting when a child can look at it, city larger than life, and she's from Chandigarh. Here the image is fully Mumbai. So you have, a kind of a impression that Mumbai ultimate. And this is what we have, the other perspective of Mumbai. You have the old settlement, the denser part, then you have the greenery, then you have the slums and the buildings together. Then you have kind of an heritage city which is there, and how do you handle with that? So the perspectives that if you want to lay or you want to create a new infrastructure, for instance, we are currently in Mumbai talking about Mumbai Metro infrastructure, and then we are talking about coastal land, we are talking about other all projects. So what we are looking for, the impacts is going to be different. The treatment for each of the geographical scale, what we do in the first picture, what we do in the fourth picture in the corner, it is going to be absolutely different. And what is going to be done in the third picture, which you have a scale where you have, this is a typical scene which I always find in Mumbai, not way back in 82, but recently in the last about 30 years, I've seen that this is the kind of thing. You have structures, then you have slums, and very well delineated slums. So we will not get into the real estate dynamics of it, but this is what really Mumbai is. And I have seen, or I perceive, and I believe that development as an intervention model. Just a second. There is somebody on the door. I have to, just a second. Just a second.
Inverbal communication.
Well, I got time to slip into my jacket too. So what I see is development as an intervention model. And one fine day you get up and see out of your window that there is this kind of a structure which is coming in, and it could be a 32-story structure or a 42-story structure. There is a bus stop which was there right at 50 meters from my house. One fine day I find work happening. So it is kind of an intervention into the existing frame of mind, the existing aspiration, the existing system. So this is one, I always believe that what I've seen in Mumbai especially, and other parts of the country and world, it happens. So development as an intervention model. What are the ramifications? What are the implications? Suppose if I was to ask you that out of your window, today you see this kind of a picture, but you can imagine a sea beach, you can imagine Jantar Mantar, you can imagine Qutub Minar, you can imagine Kaziranga, kind of the sanctuary right few kilometers away from your window. You can imagine anything. But if anything intrudes or if it is something is an intervention there, the reactions are quite different. So you can think that that is exactly what this developmental model is across the globe. I'm not talking just about India or Mumbai. And what do we typically see as professionals is that we identify a developmental problem which needs intervention. Not that there are studies not done, there are meticulous, technical, environmental, social, political, financial, all kinds of DPRs we prepare. And out of the DPR, we come back and say, yes, we justify that this is what is required. And there are debates and discussions on every activity which we do, that whether we need it or not need it. I always say that if you're discussing that, we will go back and do something else. But this is what the developmental model is. And the intervention mechanism should have wider applicability. If I'm doing something in one part of the city or one part of the country, is it applicable elsewhere? For instance, if you are looking for doing some rehabilitation in Mumbai, does that model apply elsewhere? If not, then there are needs for adaptation and adoption everywhere. So that's one area which I've been saying, that development per se has these, I would say, limitations and the advantages and opportunities. And then what we really do is we look for public participation in that. And when we look for more ideas, more in people coming in, and this is typically what I have seen is that you come out with a thought process, and if you're coming with a DPR, then we put it for public debate. Or earlier to that, in Maharashtra, we have suggestion and objection under the Maharashtra Regional and Town Planning Act. So we publish and then we seek opinions and other things. Now there is a trend internationally, let it be democratic and let it be ensuring that everybody participates. I'm not sure how well or how much we can do. I have myself been involved in quite a few projects in the public domain. And I find that, yes, there is a fair amount of receptibility and acceptance. So are we geared for it? Are we knowing all this? So these are what I would look at as a developmental model. And within that, we need to understand that there are some resettlement issues. And what does resettlement prima facie mean? Here I have used in my presentation throughout, I have used more of the IFC and World Bank kind of the definitions, and rest of the countries, rest of the institutions follow the same, like maybe the ADB or AIIB or whatever it is. But IFC and World Bank have one of the, I would say, larger domains. And in India, we have the 2013 Act, which is there. But here, since I'm talking about a project in which I was involved earlier, prima facie the World Bank, and I have used that and the IFC kind of guidelines up to a certain level to kind of share that, what resilience and what the impacts of rehabilitation has on the city, has on the people, and each and every one around. So that's what I was sharing it. So it's a disruption or displacement, of communities. For instance, we were doing one of the projects in a place called Jogeshwari, and then in a place called Kurla. So these were linear roads. They were development plan roads, 45.7 meters and about 10 kilometers and about 5 kilometers long. So what really happened? So there were studies done. So this is what I would say. We also felt there was a disruption and displacement. But the policies very clearly indicated that the project affected households, persons, and later on they can become project beneficiaries because they have been compensated or they have been given something better than what they were living earlier. And especially when they don't have a secured land tenure, especially in informal and slums. So it can be, what we have done is that while we were doing this, we understood the restrictions on the land use. Suppose if it's a DP road, in a typical development plan, uh, it can only be used for a road. And then you have other land uses which is abutting it. It could be residential, commercial, industrial, open space, or anything else. And then they had to be acquired for public purpose. So land acquisition also takes place. And what we could experience that restrictions on land use and land acquisition were kind of two major uh, uh, bottlenecks, that change of land use, that ensuring that the land acquisition is smooth and people are compensated. So we had to do that. This is in case of certain roads and railway properties, which we did. And it can be classified as either voluntary or involuntary. And it may also have physical and economic impacts.